we wouldn't be able to have these webinars be at no cost. And that's really important for us because we try our best to provide resources to everyone throughout the state. Also our promotional partners. Again, we do try our best to provide resources, not just to urban areas or rural areas, but to all local agencies throughout the state who really need extra support in meeting their climate and energy goals. Next slide, please. So we do have some upcoming events. We are winding down the SEEK virtual forum. If you're interested in participating in upcoming webinars, you can go directly to our website, and listed below is the upcoming events. We will also send this direct link out in the chat box. Next slide, please. Normally SEEK takes place in person. Unfortunately, that's not possible due to 2020. So we're trying to create a space for you all to connect with your peers. So what we did is created the SEEK peer-to-peer network, essentially a LinkedIn group where individuals can connect to other professionals in their field and just share resources. If you're interested in joining that LinkedIn group, we have a link on the slide and we'll also be directly providing it in the chat. Also, as a thanks for participating in the virtual webinar, we created a SEEK raffle. Essentially, you can enter the SEEK raffle by filling out a post-webinar survey or joining this LinkedIn group. And if you win the raffle, you'll receive a $50 gift certificate to a local business of your choice. Next slide, please. For this webinar, we do ask for you to submit your questions in the Q&A function. That makes it easier for us to monitor your questions and ensure they get answered. We also encourage you to use the chat box to connect with other people attending the webinar. And also, if you have any technical issues, you can contact myself, Tia, or my coworkers, Ryan and Serena. Next slide, please. And today, introducing our fabulous panelists, we have Angie Hacker, the Statewide Energy Efficiency Best Practice Coordinator with the Local Government Commission. We have Walker Wieland, a research scientist with the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. We have Naomi Gallardo, a public advisor for the California Energy Commission. Ina Lupin, a community assistance program manager for the California Strategic Growth Council. And last but definitely not least, Peter Payeson, who is a senior project coordinator for the City of Ontario Housing Department. So right now, I'm just going to give it away to you, Angie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's SEEK Forum. I do know it can be a tumultuous and busy time for folks, especially those serving the communities that are being hard hit by right now. So I really hope that the hour that we're going to spend together today is going to be of major value to you. My name is Angie Hacker. Like Tia said, I'm the Statewide Local Government Energy Efficiency Coordinator, and I'm the moderator for today's event on energy and climate opportunities for disadvantaged communities here in California. And as we get going, I just want to invite attendees to please use the chat box to introduce yourself. And so things like your name, organization, your location, and briefly your interest in disadvantaged communities. And I'm also going to ask my folks at LGC if you can go ahead and launch the poll. We had about 150 people register for this event today, and we want to learn a little bit more about who is here. So please select the one that best represents your professional role. And we'll just give that a few seconds. And we'll share with you the results. Maybe we'll give it another 5 seconds or so. All right. So we want to learn about who's working in disadvantaged communities, who's not, what role you do play. All right, let's go ahead and share the results. So it looks like most people work in a local government that serves disadvantaged communities. A few people that aren't sure if they do work in disadvantaged communities, and some NGOs and for-profit and other folks. All right, thank you so much for sharing that. And we'll move on. Okay, so the goal of today's webinar is to help local practitioners that serve disadvantaged communities better understand how they can take advantage of big dollar opportunities to pursue their energy and climate goals. And so I chose this as my BPC Spotlight event to amplify this topic because all the things going on in the world right now, from wildfire to pollution to racial injustice and public health crises and economic downturns, it really seems more important than ever to align available resources with the hardest hit communities. And that's really the direction that California has been headed in recent years, following some concern that high socioeconomic populations might be benefiting the most from California's energy and climate policies. So as you've already heard, I've invited some great speakers who are going to help me demystify what is really a somewhat complex world of disadvantaged communities. What are the policies, definitions, and programs and opportunities? And really, we're targeting this event for folks working on the ground who are busy already serving the folks that are most vulnerable and most burdened. And so even today, we're going to have a chance to hear from the City of Ontario, who's successfully implementing a community-driven sustainable neighborhood program using dedicated DAC funding. By the end, we're going to do a little bit of Q&A, but I am hoping that you will put your questions in the question box and we can address it throughout. Okay, so I'm going to take a couple of minutes here just to do a little bit of big picture groundwork on disadvantaged communities. So what are they? Disadvantaged communities refers to areas throughout California which suffer from a combination of economic, health, and environmental burdens, such as poverty, high unemployment, health conditions, air and water pollution, hazardous wastes. And DAC status is really a way to dedicate investment to also build social equity. But however, DACs are just one type of environmental and social justice community per the government code. So it's important to note here, and I heard this from a lot of folks as I was building this event, that not everyone is underserved or and not everyone that is underserved or in need is going to fit the state's criteria for a disadvantaged community, which is really targeting populations within a census tract. And it doesn't cover things like tribal communities, AB 1550, low-income communities, low-income individuals within non-DAC communities, or other definitions like climate vulnerabilities that's used by CARB, and there's others. But DAC designation becomes really important because it means that your community has been targeted for big dollar investments, including from the state's cap and trade program, which was originally authorized in 2006 by AB 32 to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then by 2012, SB 535 said 25% of those proceeds from cap and trade had to benefit disadvantaged communities. And disadvantaged communities represent about 2,000 census tracts and about 9 million people in the state of California. It also directed CalEPA to identify who were disadvantaged communities using CalEnviroScreen. So you're going to hear more about that next from Walker Wieland. And then in 2016, AB 1550 got more specific and said at least 25% of the proceeds not just had to benefit, but had to be spent on projects within DACs. And so we're going to hear from Ina Lupin from the Strategic Growth Council more about how those funds are being spent. And meanwhile, in 2015, SB 350 was enacted, and that called upon the CPUC to improve air quality and economic conditions in disadvantaged communities and create a disadvantaged community advisory group, which is actually chaired by Noemi Gallardo, who's with us today and is going to talk to us more about CPUC and California Energy Commission actions. And basically, these policies have unlocked major investments to disadvantaged communities, primarily ratepayer funds, cap and trade auction revenues, but other state appropriations as well. And not even listed here are a sea of other local and regional agencies that target resources to disadvantaged communities using the DAC designation. So these dollars are getting channeled through various agencies and program administrators, and they result in grants, services, research, technical assistance, and other capacity building opportunities for DACs. And so we hope by the end of this hour, you're going to know more about how to bring those resources home to benefit the folks in your communities that need them. And just to give you to get your attention and give you a quick insight into the scale of resources we're talking about, proceeds from cap and trade auction revenue have led to over $6 billion in spending through the California Climate Investment Program, with $3.5 billion of those dollars benefiting priority populations, including DACs, and $1.5 billion just in the previous state budget cycle appropriated to the California Climate Investment Program. So those are programs that range from air quality to housing, forest, transportation, and we'll hear more about those. But we are talking about significant investment in DACs, and we're happy you're here. And with that, I am going to hand it off to Walker Wieland, research scientist with Cal EPA's Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, and the state's CalEnviroScreen data guru. So he's going to help us understand what goes into the identification of a DAC and how you can use it to benefit your community. So thanks, Walker. I'll hand it to you.
All right. Thank you, Angie. Thank you for inviting me to this forum, and it's my pleasure to be speaking. And thanks so much for everyone else attending and organizing this event as well. So I'm just here to provide a little bit of information on what the tool CalEnviroScreen is for those of you who've not heard of it, and also to talk a little bit about how it's used and sort of where disadvantaged communities comes out of CalEnviroScreen. So, you know, fundamentally, CalEnviroScreen, those of you who are familiar with the tool will be familiar with this little icon here of the census tracts that are colored from green to yellow to orange to red all across California. And that's what we're doing with the tool. We're analyzing different types of burdens based in the pollution realm, but also information about people in the population realm as well. And we're evaluating California communities and producing this score that's based off of all of these different indicators that feed into CalEnviroScreen. So we're not measuring absolute risk or necessarily predicting an outcome, but instead just taking into account statewide available data sets and characterizing their distribution across all of the communities in the state. And we're doing that at a geography which is at the census tract. Census tracts, although the numbers are less familiar to people as compared to a zip code, they really help us characterize differences between communities a lot more. And a lot of data is available at the census tract that comes from the US Census, and that is helpful for us as well. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, and then just hit yes 4 times and let these little boxes pop out. One more time. Perfect. Thank you so much. Oh, okay, thanks. That's great. Okay, so just a little bit about, you know, what feeds into CalEnviroScreen. We kind of organize information in these 2 general categories. The 2 components on the top have to do with pollution. You know, one is purely exposure. What's in the air? What's in the drinking water? What pesticides are sprayed near a community? The other one's more based on facilities in the community that might not be related directly to exposure to people in the community, but have to do with general environmental degradation. Is the local stream too polluted to fish from or swim in? Is there a facility with lots of dump trucks going in and out of it every day that drives right by someone's house? So those are things that we're trying to characterize on the pollution-based side of CalEnviroScreen. The bottom there is different. We're talking about the people with sensitive populations and socioeconomic factors. What's the asthma status of people in the community? What's the cardiovascular disease status? And then also socioeconomic-wise, yeah, there's obvious ones like poverty and unemployment, but we have different types of indicators like linguistic isolation that has to do with ability to get information easily that's being distributed out, or housing burden, which is basically measuring how much of your income do you have left over to spend on other sorts of things after you've already spent it on utilities or your mortgage or your rent. So next slide. So all of these things in combination, and you can see the sort of listing of all of the indicators that we have in CalEnviroScreen on this chart here, all of them in combination lead to this overall CalEnviroScreen score. So we have a method where we take all of these different little indicators and combine them with one another at that census tract scale at all communities in California and produce this overall score that tells us cumulatively what's happening in this community. And we want to know where places are that have poor air quality, poor drinking water quality, a dirty stream or river, high rates of asthma, high unemployment and poverty. That's what CalEnviroScreen is fundamentally getting at, that cumulative nature. Next slide. So this is more of a visual way to sort of examine all of this cumulativeness, that's not a word, of all of the different indicators in CalEnviroScreen. And you can see here, you can examine these indicators one by one, and we have mapping platforms available for that. But really what we're doing here, and when you see that green to red map, that's our most popular and accessed map online, that's the one that we're referring to, where it combines all of these things together. Next slide. So the results are available as an interactive map. I think that these slides were distributed to attendees or will be made available. And so that link right there is accessible. If you've not yet seen, you can zoom into a community of interest to you, click on a census tract and get a sense of like, what are some of the indicators of concern there? And you might be wondering, well, how does this relate to disadvantaged communities? Hopefully the next slide should tell us that. Next slide. Yeah, so basically how we get from that red to green map to this map of SB 535 disadvantaged communities, which Angie showed in the very first title slide, is we cut off the top 25% scoring census tracts in CalEnviroScreen. So the top quarter of all the census tracts in the state, those are cut off, and we produce this other mapping tool, which is the same data and method that I just talked about in CalEnviroScreen, but now this is just a simple yes, no designation for disadvantaged community for CalEnviroScreen. So this map might be more useful if you're just interested in understanding yes or no. Next slide. So there's a lot of different types of uses in CalEnviroScreen. I think some of the main ones that we'll be talking about today, and the other presenters will be talking about today, relate to California climate investments. Basically, the way it works is that we produce the results from CalEnviroScreen, and then Cal EPA designates disadvantaged communities based off of CalEnviroScreen data and analysis. And then that designation of top 25% is then fed into the disadvantaged communities or California climate investment funding disbursements. So that's essentially like the super quick version of how it works. But there's a lot of different other ways in statute that CalEnviroScreen is used at other boards and departments. It's also used by other researchers across the state, or I'm sorry, across the country, in thinking about how they can evaluate cumulative impacts in their community. It's used by individuals in local governments thinking about prioritizing hiring to disadvantaged communities. And then also a really significant local use is that SB 1000, which is a local general plan piece of legislation that talks about incorporating EJ into general plans, and which CalEnviroScreen is a resource for that as well. So next slide. So that's my last slide. The next version of the tool is coming out soon. So there's a link for our listserv there, and you'll get notices on when the draft is coming out for CalEnviroScreen 4.0, when our public process will be, and that sort of thing. So I'd really invite you to get involved and figure out what, get a sense of what we're working on and what's coming next. And I'll stop there. Thanks. Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks so much, Walker. Really appreciate that. Folks, again, if you have questions, please put them in the question box. We're going to move on to our next speaker. So I'd now like to welcome Naomi Gallardo, Public Advisor with the California Energy Commission, and she's going to introduce us to some DAC opportunities through the California Energy Commission, CPUC, and Air Resources Board outside of the Climate Investment Program. All right, thank you very much, Naomi.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be on this panel. Thank you, Angie. Again, I'm Noemi Gallardo, the Public Advisor at the California Energy Commission. My role there is to help further democratize the energy space by making sure no one is left behind or left out of the Energy Commission's proceedings and efforts. We conduct outreach, engagement, and advance energy equity, with disadvantaged communities being a major focus of our work. On that note, I'm going to tell you about ways that disadvantaged communities and local governments can maximize state funding and partnership opportunities. Next slide. I always like to begin by centering on what's at stake. As this slide says, climate change requires rapid action. And I really appreciate this image because it slaps us awake to the obvious. There is no planet B. This is our one chance to get it right, and we're running out of time. And something 2020 has revealed to us is that we're not taking good care of Mother Earth, and there is no denying that Mama is mad at us. Next slide. Unfortunately, crises, including climate change and the pandemic, hit people of color, low income, and disadvantaged communities first and worst. Studies show that COVID-19 disproportionately affects Black and Brown communities because of existing health disparities caused by disproportionate air pollution and economic inequities in those communities. Next slide. So it's critical that we as state agencies continue to evolve, understanding the realities of where we're at and committing to get to a better place. This image has defects, but the intention is clear. We're striving to get better. Next slide. The Energy Commission has been working to advance energy equity for a long time. In 2015, we put into a resolution our commitment to increase the participation of and increase the benefits to what I call energy equity communities, which includes the focus of our attention today, disadvantaged communities. In 2017, we also put into writing our commitment to increasing the participation of and benefits to tribes. As Angie explained earlier, tribes aren't considered disadvantaged communities, but the Energy Commission is investing much attention and intention to uplift tribal nations and communities, and I think it's important to highlight them. Next slide. Now I'll shift to talking about the various resources, services, and opportunities resulting from policies like SB 350 that Angie mentioned earlier. One of the best results of SB 350 was the formation of the Disadvantaged Communities Advisory Group, lovingly known as DACAG. They're a group of representatives from disadvantaged communities who provide advice to the Energy Commission and the CPUC on programs proposed to achieve clean energy and pollution reduction. The group meets monthly on the third Friday of the month. I invite you to join the meetings. It is a good learning space because they get into robust discussions about challenges and opportunities in disadvantaged communities, and they provide ideas about best practices and solutions that local governments and advocates for disadvantaged communities can benefit from. One of the earliest guidance they provided, for example, was an equity framework. I included links on the slides to the framework and the DACAG web pages for those of you interested in learning more. Next slide. Another forward-thinking effort I want to highlight is SB 100, California's commitment to achieving 100% clean energy by 2045. I bring this up because it's an effort that 3 of the major energy-focused agencies are working on, and we need the help of the public and trusted stakeholders like all of you to help us reach our objectives. The Energy Commission, CPUC, and ARB are in the process of completing a joint agency report evaluating the feasibility of the 100% zero carbon electricity policy. The report is due early next year, and then we'll move into the implementation phase. I also bring up SB 100 because it is a good example of how disadvantaged communities can influence policy design and implementation. SB 100 doesn't specify an equity approach, but advancing equity is a priority for all of the agencies. So we sought the input of the DACAG and others to help us put an equity lens on the effort. Their feedback was invaluable and guided us to include non-energy benefits and social costs in our future analyses. And they've also inspired us to form an equity working group to advise us in future phases. I encourage you to get involved and learn more by going to www.energy.ca.gov/SB100. Next slide. I'll move to the topic of funding opportunities now. One of the most robust funding opportunities that the CEC and CPUC work on together is the AB 523 Electric Program Investment Charge, better known as EPIC. This is a ratepayer-funded program that invests more than $160 million annually in scientific and technological research. The EPIC program benefits electricity ratepayers from PG&E, SCE, and SDG&E. This graph shows AB 523's requirement that at least 25% of technology demonstration and deployment funds be invested at sites located in and benefiting disadvantaged communities, and 10% in and benefiting low-income communities, for a total of 35% to be invested in these communities. I'm happy to report, though, on the next slide, you'll see that as of 12/31, that's December 31st of last year, we've invested 65% of funds in disadvantaged and low-income communities. And in dollars, it's more than $186 million that has been invested. We've gone above and beyond the 35% mandate, which we're really proud of. On this slide, you also see a map showing where the investments have been made, with clusters popping up in the Bay Area, Central Valley, and Greater Los Angeles area. Next slide. I also want to note that the DACAG and other community stakeholders have influenced our EPIC program by emphasizing to us that we needed criteria for our solicitations that prioritize benefits to disadvantaged communities and community engagement to help ensure community needs were being met. Because of that advice, we baked in that criteria for our solicitations as seen here. Next slide. The community engagement criterion requires applicants of the solicitations to partner with community-based organizations, and these CBOs need to meet certain requirements. And this is to help ensure it's not a checkbox. For example, one requirement is that the CBO must have an office in the region and have a demographic profile similar to the communities they serve. Next slide. I'll also quickly highlight that the CPUC is seeking to improve internal coordination of EPIC. They selected equity as one of 4 energy policy areas around which to have a series of public meetings to gather lessons learned from EPIC project participants with the goal of improving the coordination across EPIC and also to better connect R&D projects with energy policymaking. The final equity focused meeting of the year is scheduled for December 3rd, 2020, and anyone interested in participating may register at the link on the slide, which is www.epicpartnership.org/equity. Next slide. There are a few other ratepayer funded programs overseen by the CPUC focused on disadvantaged communities that I want to share with you. First is the DAC Single Family Affordable Solar Homes Program, also known as DAC-SASH. Don't you love these acronyms? It offers incentives for single-family homeowners living in disadvantaged communities who are an IOU customer and meet certain income qualifications to access rooftop solar at no cost to the homeowner or a very low cost. It's a great program that Grid Alternatives administers. They accept applications through their Energy for All program, and I encourage you to check it out. Next slide. The following opportunity is not ratepayer funded, but good to uplift. The Solar on Multifamily Affordable Housing Program, known as SOMA, has a goal to develop by December 31st of 2030 at least 300 megawatts of installed solar generating capacity on multifamily affordable housing, and it directs $100 million annually from IOUs, greenhouse gas auction proceeds to do it. SOMA is a great template for what an equity-focused program should look like. SOMA encourages installation in DACs. The program requires lowering tenant energy bills. It requires workforce development opportunities and stakeholder education. It also keeps the focus on community. For example, the administrator is a team comprised of nonprofit organizations. And SOMA also has an advisory council to ensure the needs of the community stay front and center. On this slide, you'll see the images from the SOMA website, which is very user-friendly and is set up to educate all stakeholders involved in the process, including tenants, building owners, installers, folks looking for workforce development opportunities, et cetera. So visit the links to learn more. Next slide. The final program is the Self-Generation Incentive Program, known as SGIP, which incentivizes energy storage, complement to solar. The CPUC recently added the SGIP equity and equity resiliency programs to prioritize communities that are lower income, medically vulnerable, and at risk for fire. The rebates are so significant that they can cover almost or all of the cost, including technology and installation. The rebate rate for the equity program, for example, is $850 per kilowatt hour and covers approximately 85% of the cost of an average energy storage system. And the rebate rate for the equity resiliency program is $1,000 per kilowatt hour and covers close to 100% of the cost. The funds are available for residential and non-residential buildings, and both programs prioritize disadvantaged communities. I included a table here that lists out the criteria for those programs in case you want to check that out later. Next slide. I'll spend my final minutes focusing on a resource called Empower Innovation that can help both disadvantaged communities and local governments find funding and partnership opportunities. I'd like to take a quick poll. We can bring that up. So I want to see who knows about Empower Innovation. So the question is, have you joined Empower Innovation? You can click yes. You can click no, never heard of it. Or 3, you could click heard of it, but not sure how to register. You can do that now. I would appreciate it. All right, if we want to show the results. Okay, so I have a lot of work to do and my team at the Energy Commission, because most of you, about 78%, have never heard of it. So I'm going to introduce you to that now. Let's see. And for those of you who have heard of it, this is a good refresher. So Empower Innovation is an online networking platform to connect friends and money. So it's a winning combo. The idea behind Empower Innovation is to connect diverse stakeholders so that together they can bring transformational change to their communities. Right now, we have over 1,600 members and over $2 billion in funding possibilities. When you register, you'll be able to select from an array of topics that are of interest to you, and you'll receive a digest of those opportunities related to the topics you choose. For this group, I'd recommend selecting equity and government so you can get those things that are related to disadvantaged communities. Next slide. Empower Innovation provides access to the latest energy-related funding opportunities available at the local, state, and federal levels, and even private. When you click on the funding tab at the top, it'll take you to a page that enables you to add filters to narrow the scope of the solicitations that would be a good fit for your organization or community. They might be grants, loans, prizes, and other types. We made sure to include a filter for equity categories, including disadvantaged communities, which you can see here. And you can receive a monthly digest of all the funding opportunities for disadvantaged communities. Next slide. Empower Innovation also helps you find a friend. So you can, for example, for solicitations that require partners, you may need to find a community-based organization. And this Empower Innovation can help you do that. And if we go to the next slide. We're limited on time, so I did not do Empower Innovation justice, but you can reach out to me directly to find out more, or you can also reach out to empowerinnovation.net/en/contact us and to get more information. Thank you so much, and don't forget to vote.
Thank you so much, Noemi. And again, questions should go into the question box and we'll address some at the end as well. Really appreciate that presentation. And now I'd like to hand it over to Ina Lupin from, she is the Community Assistance Program Manager with the California Strategic Growth Council, and she's going to tell us about DAC opportunities that are funded by cap and trade proceeds. So thanks so much for being with us, Ina. You have to unmute yourself. Sorry, Ina, we are having trouble hearing you. I think it might be your headphones.
Does that work better?
It does. Thank you.
Hey, oh gosh, thank you. Well, I just said twice now that I wanted to say thank you so much to Angie for putting this together. And it's such a privilege to be on this panel and to hear about all of the exciting work that's going on in the state. So I will just dive in. My name is Ina Lupin, and I am the Community Assistance Program Manager at the Strategic Growth Council. If we could go to the next slide, that would be great. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Strategic Growth Council, I just wanted to provide a little bit of information about who we are. We coordinate and work with a number of different public agencies, communities, and stakeholders across the state to achieve sustainability, equity, economic prosperity, and quality of life for all Californians. We have a number of different grant programs that are available under the California Climate Investments umbrella. And then we also provide technical assistance and capacity building support to communities across the state. So we can go to the next slide, please. Great. So what are the California Climate Investments? I know we've talked quite a bit already about CCI in a couple of different presentations, but wanted to really focus in on these funds that are generated through our cap and trade system in California. These funds are really focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but they also focus on a lot of other benefits to communities, including jobs, improving public health, and a number of different environmental factors in communities across the state. And as mentioned before, there is a focus and emphasis on disadvantaged communities for a number of these programs. So a really great thing to know about. Next slide, please. So this slide actually just shows a little bit of information about what the California Climate Investments, how cap and trade works essentially. So we cap emissions at a certain level, and then allowances are put into an auction, and the proceeds from that go into a number of different grant opportunities that I will be talking about in a moment. Next slide, please. There are 3 different program types underneath this larger umbrella of California climate investments. And the grants are sort of spread out across a number of different agencies across the state. So if you go to the California Climate Investments website, you can see a list of all of the different programs that are available. But in order to find more information, you'll often want to look on specific agencies' websites. And these 3 buckets are generally focused on sustainable communities and clean transportation, which focuses a lot on transportation investments, affordable housing, urban greening, and forestry, pieces like that. We also have a number of things focused on energy efficiency, which were a number of the things that Noemi spoke about earlier. And then we also have this 3rd category of natural resources and waste diversion. Next slide, please. Great. So we then have a number of different, here we just have a list of all kinds of different outcomes from the California climate investments so far. And as you can see, about $3.5 billion has already been invested in priority population communities. And that actually includes both disadvantaged communities and low-income communities across the state. That funding goes into all kinds of different projects. You'll see a number of them here: affordable housing, urban trees, land preservation and restoration, transit and expanding transit service, energy efficiency, and also quite a number of zero emission and plug-in vehicle opportunities as well. Next slide, please. And then we have the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, which is actually administered through the Strategic Growth Council. This is actually the point where I'll start talking about some really specific programs that we have at SGC. So this program, as you can see in the graphic that we have here, funds a number of different types of investments underneath this same umbrella of this program. So it will fund affordable housing, bike lanes, pedestrian pathways, urban greening, all kinds of things that need to come together to create a really healthy and sustainable community. Statutorily, at least, oh, there we go, sorry, thanks. Statutorily, at least 50% of these funds are invested in disadvantaged communities. In practice, we actually often end up investing more than that in disadvantaged communities. So that's just the baseline. And I also included a little bit of information on the timeline. The guidelines will be released November 17th and applications are due December 15th. Another important thing to note on this program is that it's available every year as long as cap and trade continues, because it's continuously appropriated. So if this year doesn't work out for you, you could always consider an upcoming year. Now I'm ready for the next slide, please. Thanks. So another really great program that Peter is actually going to be talking about in a little bit more depth is the Transformative Climate Communities program. This program focuses on the top 10% of disadvantaged communities according to CalEnviroScreen, and really pulls together all kinds of different California climate investments programs under this one umbrella. So it's a great program. We unfortunately didn't get any funding for it this year. So there won't be a cycle this year, but hopefully there will be in the future. And Peter will be able to talk, I think, a little bit more about what that really looks like on the ground. Next slide, please. Next, I wanted to talk also a little bit about CARB's Mobility Project Voucher program. This funds all kinds of different innovative mobility options, really focused on disadvantaged communities and underserved communities. They have $20 million currently, $2 million which are set aside for tribes. And the application window just opened yesterday on a first come, first served basis. So that's definitely a really great opportunity. CARB also has a number of other voucher programs that are available for folks to be able to, be able to buy electric vehicles and other types of investments to look into as well. Next slide, please. And now I wanted to actually talk about my program. So I work at the Strategic Growth Council on our California Climate Investments Technical Assistance Program. Next slide, please. We focus on a number of different services, including capacity building, application assistance, and implementation assistance. And we provide support for our programs, but also for other programs underneath the California Climate Investments umbrella. You'll see here a list of the services that we provide, but this isn't exhaustive by any means. We provide a number of other services depending on the needs of specific programs and communities. Next slide, please. And here are a list of opportunities that are available currently. If you're interested in any of these, please feel free to reach out to me. I put my contact information at the end of my presentation. We're actually currently doing a call for AHSC. So if you're interested in that program, definitely look into technical assistance for that. But we also have quite a few other opportunities that are listed here. So feel free to reach out if you are interested. Next slide, please. We're also piloting a new concept, which will be focused on providing some capacity building and technical assistance for specific community members. It's a leadership development cohort focused on disadvantaged communities that will be bringing together 20 to 25 leaders from across the state for networking and leadership development opportunities and training. That will be a year-long effort, followed by technical assistance that we will be providing to each one of the participants in the cohort. This is a pilot that we're hoping will help us to inform, the future of our technical assistance program in ways that we can sort of continue to help support communities across the state. Next slide, please. I also wanted to highlight that there are a ton of different places online where you can find information about the California climate investments. As I mentioned, there are a ton of them, and they are all in different timelines and have specifications that are important to pay attention to. So it's always good to keep an eye on these websites. We have this new resource called the California Grants Portal, which the California State Libraries has put together. It's a really great opportunity to find information about programs that are available under CCI, but also all kinds of different programs that are available at the state level. So that's definitely a great one to check out. And state agencies are required to put, all of our information up on that website and keep it updated. So that's really a place that I'd recommend looking first. We also have on the California Climate Investments website that's put together by CARB, we have a list of all of the different programs, and as well as a calendar, which has some information about different events that are going on around the state and deadlines for getting in grant applications. There's also a couple of different websites, one here that's put together by the Local Government Commission, actually, this fundingresource.org. And CARB also has a funding wizard, which has a number of opportunities as well. And I also just wanted to highlight our newsletter at SGC. We do our best to pull together different opportunities that are available at the state level, some foundation opportunities, and job opportunities, a number of different things. So that's a really great one to follow as well. And also, actually, I didn't include it on my slide, but CARB has been planning some audience webinars as well that are really great to check out. They will be going on, let's see here. There's one on November 5th for land conservancies, one on November 18th for nonprofit organizations, and on December 9th for local governments. There are also upcoming webinars for tribal governments, transit agencies, farmers, and businesses. And this is part of an effort on CARB's part to really try to focus in on specific applicants to these programs to be able to pull together all the programs that you could potentially be applying for. So definitely check those out if you get a chance. And then next slide. And then this is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out. As I said, we have all kinds of opportunities that are available for technical assistance, and I'm also happy to help connect you to folks at other state agencies related to other California climate investments programs. So thanks so much for the opportunity, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Ina. That was a lot of information, and really want to echo how great it is that there's a technical assistance opportunity. So reach out to Ina if you're looking for some help obtaining some of these resources. All right, we're going to move on to our last speaker. I want to introduce Peter Paulson from the City of Ontario, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about his Transformative Climate Communities project that's taking place right now. So take it away, Peter.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction, Angie. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Paulson. I am the Senior Project Coordinator here at the Housing Department for the City of Ontario. A brief little history about the City of Ontario, in case you don't know where we are. We're located in San Bernardino County. We're about 35 miles outside of Los Angeles. We are a 50 square mile city with a population of approximately 165,000. During 2018, we were working with SGC when we heard of this great new opportunity that came out, the Transformative Climate Communities Grant Program. Kind of as Ina pointed out, it really is just a compilation of all of, I shouldn't say all, but a majority of CCI projects. So what's so great about this program is it allows for actual transformation that you can really see over such a short period of time. It allows you to delve into so many different project and program areas that the state is offering. So it was a really big interest to us. We knew we could use it. As Walker was sharing with you about CalEnviroScreen, if you look up Ontario, we're bright red. We're in the top percentile. It's definitely not something to be proud of, but it's definitely something that we were glad to be made aware of, and we're striving to work towards moving more towards a green color on that map that you'll see. So with TCC, Transformative Climate Communities, TCC, we're able to do that. We've really built out a great program, which, as you can see here on the screen, we have dubbed the name Ontario Together. It is a communal effort. It's not just the city here, us working on this project. It has involved partnerships from several nonprofits, all local CBOs, other transportation authorities and jurisdictions here in the city and in the county. And there is a great deal of boots on the ground, community engagement and outreach, which is an extremely important factor when we were looking at putting together this program. As part of the requirements, we had to go out into the community. We had to figure out what the needs are. What do our residents want? What do they want to see in their neighborhood? So with that, we went out, we secured a 4.86 square mile project area for our TCC grant program. And we just began planning out what does the community need? Where can we improve? How can we build out a better Ontario? And that was the whole part, was to get people, was to get places and build prosperity. Those are our three ideals and that we were striving for with Ontario Together. So here on the screen, this is just kind of like a brief little poster board image that we kind of created just to kind of give a really high glimpse overview of what Ontario Together is. Top left, we have CEP, which stands for our Community Engagement Plan and Health and Wellness Activities. Those ladies up there on that picture are some of the hardest working individuals. They're all local residents here in the city of Ontario, appointed leaders, and they go out and they help spread the word about every single project and program that the city is offering. They share everything that we're doing with TCC, and they help our disadvantaged communities get access to all of these opportunities for them. We also have an organics project as well as an urban canopy project. Again, all CCI projects, which are to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which Ina pointed out is a huge component of CCI, as well as just improving the economic prosperity of a community. So we have that going on. Probably our big flagship project, that's the shiny one that everyone can see, is our housing development, which is technically lumped under an Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grant project type, ASIC. So that is a 101 unit housing, affordable housing development that's going to be here in our project area. What's great about it is we are also coupling it with a low income weatherization program, LIWIP, where we will be installing 265 kilowatts DC of solar PV, which is going to allow this development to be an NZE project. It's going to be a completely net zero energy project, which is really going to be extremely beneficial, not just for the environment, but also for our disadvantaged residents that will be occupying these units by lowering, obviously, their utility bills. So extremely excited with that. And then along with active transportation, ATP, we're putting in over 5 miles of new bike lanes. We are improving a vast majority of our pedestrian pathways, creating multi-use trails for our residents, just to kind of help improve that walkability, improve that mobility, and help reduce greenhouse gas and just other emissions by less people driving. And that's kind of our goal, is to build a city that is accessible by any means, where you don't necessarily need a car all the time. So that's what we're trying to push for here in Ontario, especially with TCC. And then we have LC-TOP, Low Carbon Transportation Opportunities Program. So in working with Omnitrans, who is our local public transportation service provider here in the county of San Bernardino, with TCC, we were able to secure enough funding to buy them 2 brand new RNG renewable gas buses, which are far cleaner than CNG buses. So we were really excited to be able to get those for them. And those will be specifically used for Route 83, which is still Omnitrans's highest ridership route. So we will be reducing headways on that, which the community was super grateful for. And we're going to really see some positivity there with improved public transportation. Again, just kind of focusing in on that reduction of GHG. Next slide, please. Here is what we call our placemat for Ontario Together. It kind of gives you an overview. You can see on the map on the right-hand side, that is our project area with some highlights. Again, with our goals, GHG reduction, number 1, health, with healthy air, healthy food, safe and active transportation, and safe and affordable housing. And then prosperity. With TCC, there is a huge job component and workforce component, where we actually have an entire transformative plan called Workforce Development Plan. And a lot of our projects include hiring or training local residents in the project area from this disadvantaged community to get them into these new industries, like the solar industry, like the organics industry, and into the affordable housing industry, to provide them training and to create brand new opportunities for them in these really thriving and upcoming industries. So, I mean, apart from this, TCC has just been an incredible opportunity for the city of Ontario and for the other local jurisdictions that have had the opportunity to be awarded, I believe, over the last 3 or 4 rounds of awards. So you might be thinking to yourself, Peter, this sounds great. This is incredible. There's so much going on. There's so many opportunities. You know, it's such a big grant. It's a lot of funding. We received $35 million. So you're probably saying, how do we get this? How do we work towards this? What are the steps? Is it difficult? Is it easy? How do we go about this? Unfortunately, as Ina was mentioning, it's not something that's appropriated every single year within the state's budget. But I know they are still working hard with legislatures to get future funding. And when that time comes, I would love to see more local jurisdictions from disadvantaged communities take advantage of this program, because it's something that you can actually really see a transformation in your community. It is definitely not something to be taken lightly. When you look at the number of projects and the number of programs that will be implemented through this project, it is going to be a heavy lift. There is going to definitely need to be some sort of, strong capacity there for your team. So I'd be more than happy. I know we're running short on time, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about our process and kind of how we got this award. I'm going to go ahead and leave my contact. The lights turned off on me. I'm going to go ahead and leave my contact information in the chat box. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I can go ahead and walk you through how the City of Ontario came into TCC, what steps we had to take, and hopefully help you along the way in any future grants that you look for, if it's not TCC. But yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was really inspiring. I hope it inspired others as well who may be considering taking advantage of some of these opportunities. There was one question. I think we're doing a great job taking care of questions online in the question feature. There was one question for you, Peter, and they just wanted to know, how did you choose your particular project area?
Yeah, absolutely. So our project area was chosen based off of some input that we received from our community when we went out and actually did some research with the community and talked with everyone. But at the same time, we also had something that was already pre-existing. It was called our Heal Zone, which was created using a grant from that we received through Kaiser Permanente to create healthy eating and active living. So it was already kind of a zone focused in based off of census tracts and based off of disadvantaged communities. And we saw this big pocket right here in this almost 5 square mile area. So that's kind of how we came to this project area.
Thank you so much. There are some other questions coming in related to cap and trade, and I think that might be a larger topic, but the good news is this is not the end of the conversation. So let me do a little wrapping up, and I want to share with you how you can continue along this conversation with us. So, it's very possible at this point you went from sort of unaware to all these opportunities to now, holy cow, totally overwhelmed. And so here are some of the resources we talked about today. This presentation will be distributed afterwards with live links. There's a lot of places to go for more information. And to try to continue to help folks navigate through all of this, we do have some other opportunities to stay engaged. And so I wanted to share that with you. We are going to also, when we follow up after this event, we'll invite you to join a listserv on this topic to continue the discussion over email. So that's the DAC Climate listserv, and already a lot of you have signed up for it. We'll send you the way to sign up for it again after this event. And the other thing I wanted to suggest to you too is that my role as Energy Efficiency Best Practice Coordinator also provides some technical assistance. It's really more of a gopher role, meaning reach out to me, you can submit a request to me for additional information and I can help track it down for you. So some of the questions we got today that we didn't have a time to get to, I can follow back up with you on that, or you can go to eecoordinator.info and submit a request for technical assistance through that portal as well. So finally, I just want to say a big thank you to all of our speakers and all of you for spending the hour with us. I really hope that this helped you illuminate some opportunities for disadvantaged communities to really pursue their energy and climate goals. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Tia to wrap us up.
Hi, Angie. Thank you for taking the time to create this really amazing webinar. I believe this topic is extremely important. For anyone who's interested in participating in our remaining webinars, you can see them on this list, and we'll also send a link directly to our website. We do ask for you to take the time to fill out what we call a post-webinar survey. This provides really critical feedback for us to make sure we're providing content that's actually really helpful for local jurisdictions and in supporting your effort for climate and renewable energy. So with that, I'll close off this webinar. Thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for the work you all do and for supporting our communities throughout the state. Bye everyone.